Hello, welcome to Rebel Base, IGN's weekly Star Wars show.
Guillermo del Toro wants to make a Star Wars movie, Krupa. Your old friend Guillermo.
Yeah,
You spoke to him on the phone once and claimed you're his best friend.
That's how I make friends. So he said to Yahoo that he wants to make a film about the Hutts and the rise of Jabba the Hutt and make a mafia movie set in the Star Wars universe, which is something a lot of people have talked about doing.
Yeah, definitely.
Focusing on crime, whether that's on Coruscant or the bounty hunters, because crime is a part of the Star Wars universe and lets you do a slightly darker tone of film.
Yeah.
But saying that, Guillermo del Toro says he wants to make a lot of movies.
He does, yeah.
He's attached to like Lovecraft movies that never get made. He's attached to the Justice League Dark and the Hobbit movies. So there's a lot of movies that go by the wayside. But I think that's also because he's just quite a creative individual. And if you're creative, Hollywood's not a good place. You need to also be quite a shrewd businessman sometimes.
Which he's definitely not. Because I think like his budget for Hellboy 3 is ridiculous. And it's just like, our films never get made, mate.
$120 million.
Yeah. It's like, the first two films didn't make that much money. So who's going to go, all right, well, the first two didn't make that much. Just a spunk load of more. Yeah. No, it's not going to happen, is it?
Well, see, we're going on a tangent about Guillermo del Toro's economics here.
So he said, I would do the sort of Godfather saga that Jabba the Hutt had to go through to gain control. One, because the character looks the most like me, and I like him. I love the idea of a Hutt-type mafia, very complex coup. I just love the character. I'd really like that idea. But then he also said, this is not real. This is me as a fat geek just geeking out and talking about it. But he is a really, really good guy to do a dark Star Wars film, I think.
I think he's also a good guy to do, like... It's hard to know what you sent it on, but like, he's a great monster guy. That's the thing I think above all that he loves. When I've seen interviews with him, he loves speculative fiction. He loves fantasy. He loves sci-fi. But above all else, he loves horror.
Yeah.
He says in his library he has one shelf devoted to fantasy, one shelf devoted to science fiction, and an entire room devoted to horror.
Right.
From like Lovecraft to Algernon Blackwood, M.R. James, like gothic romance, all that sort of stuff. So he'd be perfect if they ever did something focusing more on the monsters. I don't know how you expand that into an entire movie, but if there's a movie where they go to a planet and that's a big part of it, almost like a King Kong in space, he'd be a great guy to like design a lot of those creatures. So Benicio del Toro,
different Del Toro, unrelated.
Different Del Toro for different needs, has said that he is being considered, it's been said of him that he's been considered for a villain in episode 8.
Well, apparently, sources close to the casting have said he's been offered the role. But obviously, it's all speculation, could mean nothing. He's in the Disney family, obviously, with Guardians. He's like played the Collector in that.
Yeah.
But do you think he'd be a good Star Wars villain?
I don't know. I think a lot of those secondary villains get a bit short shrift. Yeah. Because obviously, in the original trilogy, you have two of the greatest villains in all of cinema history. Yeah. And then in the prequels, because Vader doesn't yet exist and then Palpatine only comes in later on, they have to like go through these disposable villains who can't stay around. So you have Maul, who everyone loved visually and the fight sequence, then he gets disposed. Because you need like hurdles to be overcome. So you get dispose of him, Dooku gets disposed, Grievous gets disposed because they don't stick around. But now that we're going in uncharted territory to a degree with the expanded universe, you could have a new villain that appears that stays around.
I guess so. But then at the same time, it kind of breaks tradition of just having like, you know, the main villain focus for like, you know, the entire trilogy, which is kind of what happened really.
If only for the 3 though. It's not much of a pattern, I guess.
Yeah.
I also think that's the tension that the new trilogy will face. How much to be beholden to the originals. Because if they go too close to them, people will just go, it's more the same. Or are they brave and break away from that? Like, have that rooting in the kind of, whatever you want to call the magic of Star Wars, and then kind of like play off against it.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't want it to be like Star Trek, where, you know, every film is like this little self-contained thing.
But that's the worst thing about Star Trek, because the first one did this thing where it said we're going to go off and go on new adventures, and then it committed the sin of the second one doing Khan and just staying on Earth and being kind of
rubbish.
Kind of doing all the things, like doing the moment against the glass. It's like, I don't need to see that. There's already a movie that has that exact moment, that has this exact villain. So I feel like I kind of want them to be, I don't know, I think by virtue of having people like Skywalker and having those names in it, it's going to feel connected to the original, but I think they should be a bit brave.
Okay.
So it's good to deviate from the template.
What, right? If he's playing, here we go. I've mentioned him all the time, and we did have an email the other day actually saying that they want to know more about Grand Admiral Thrawn. So maybe we'll do an entire episode on him. But what if he's playing Grand Admiral Thrawn? He's been out in the outer galaxies, and he's come back to see about the mess of the Empire's left. And obviously, I'm pretty sure things aren't going to end well for the First Order, or New Order, as they sometimes are called on this show. So maybe he's coming back from the outer galaxies to see what's going on. I
like that idea, the fact that, because anytime any great dictatorship kind of falls, there's always this like period of contest for leadership, because there's a power vacuum. And great empires that are cohesive when there's a charismatic figure, once that goes, can splinter. So imagine if you get if the First Order splinters, or there's different empire factions. So instead of good and evil, it becomes in later films much more complex. The situation.
That's interesting.
Again, speculation.
Again, all speculation, but it's good. And the last bit of kind of news. So Amy Schumer, the comedian, did a shoot with GQ with some risque pictures of her in bikinis, and you can see her there.
You're quite well acquainted with a lot of these pictures.
I've looked at the pictures quite a few times, yeah. She's posing in a bikini with like C-3PO and R2-D2. It's basically the idea was that she's the funniest woman in the galaxy. Star Wars. Star Wars is popular. Let's do that.
Got it.
And yeah, so they're obviously quite funny, but they're a little bit silly as well.
And you know who really loved it? Lucasfilm and Disney, who said, so this is an official tweet. Lucasfilm and Disney didn't approve, participate, or condone the inappropriate use of our characters in this manner.
But I mean, it's just a bit of fun, isn't it, really? But I guess a lot of children are into Star Wars.
Shall I suck C-3PO's finger?
But the best thing about it is Mark Hamill tweeted saying, "Got excited when I saw Amy Schumer's GQ magazine pics and thought she was just being Cat in episode 8. We should be so lucky." Now, this is obviously just a little tweet, but we should be so lucky. He's obviously not going to die in episode 7. He's going to be along for episode 8.
There's also been there's been a similar sort of Twitter exchange between him and Gwendolyn Christie, where they said something like, "I'll see you next time." Again, implying that they are obviously going to reunite for the shoot for episode 8.
Excellent.
So you heard it here first, or second.
Have you seen any Twitter things going on that you could maybe send in to us? Let us know, rebelbase@ign.com. Time for another edition of Force Feedback, probably the best named feature in IGN history. First up, Kiefer Jenkins, who says, "Hey guys, love the show, keep up the great content. Being half Guatemalan, I think it's awesome that Oscar Isaac has been cast as a main character in the new Star Wars, and that he appears to be a badass. Just makes this even more awesome. In celebration of this, I photoshopped myself to be the second Guatemalan rebel pilot. Enjoy." So this is people sending us in good Photoshop and bad Photoshop of their faces as Star Wars characters.
I think this could be like the main feature on Rebel Base is you photoshopping yourself in Star Wars. Oh my god, what have I asked for now?
Yeah, why isn't anyone photoshopping us into it? I want to be a Guatemalan pilot.
Although when you said that, you said I photoshopped myself in as the second pilot.
Yeah.
I did imagine him in like the droid position, just as a head.
No, he just put it on Oscar Isaac.
It's a better Photoshop. It's a better... But not as funny.
But he also sent in a link to his video, which is the E3 Battlefront X-Wing experience. So at E3, I didn't get to go in it, did you? So you basically get to sit in an X-Wing and like tool around the galaxy, and they do a little video for you. He said, "I wore my Mandalorian costume," and it's amazing. You see like a Mandalorian like armored dude like tool around the galaxy in an X-Wing. When do you ever get to see that? Never. That's why, Daniel.
So there's no name for this one, but it's all about Boba Fett. How to fix Boba Fett, it's called. If there is a standalone Boba Fett movie in the works, the best way to fix the whole Fett is a Django clone nonsense is to kill him off.
What?
The movie would be similar to No Country for Old Men, where Boba Fett would be like Javier Bardem's character, and the movie's protagonist would be Boba Fett's target bounty.
Right.
By limiting his screen time to essential moments, this would not only return some of the mystique, but also make Boba Fett a cool and menacing character. The film would climax to a final showdown where we're rooting for both characters to come out of it alive, but in the end, Boba Fett, i.e. Django's clone, is killed, and the hero actually takes his place and becomes the Boba Fett of Empire and Jedi.
Well, no, I mean, that is all right, but you have to, in No Country for Old Men, there's about 50 characters who have a lot of screen time. So Javier Bardem is only limited because there's so many other things going on as well.
Yeah,
whereas if it's a Boba Fett movie, you kind of want to see him quite
also,
a lot.
you need to tweak the originals because they use Thingy's voice.
Yeah.
Django's voice.
So
I do like the idea of limiting his screen time, because there's a problem when you make a film about an anti-hero. But I almost feel like that problem does, even while it is traditionally a problem with Boba Fett, it doesn't really matter anymore.
No.
Because people just love him.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter that he's like kind of this, he's more a morally grey person anyway, so I think you can root for him. But anyway, like
but here's the thing, though. Do you think that like a Boba Fett film is ever going to be able to like live up to expectation? No is the answer.
No.
Next, Dave H, who says, I was under the impression that it hadn't been confirmed yet whether John Boyega and Daisy Ridley's characters are Force sensitive. As such, while I was watching the recent Comic-Con event, I noticed an interesting reaction at one point from John Boyega. As Adam Driver's being announced, John suddenly goes, Daisy, and looks around intently, as if both he and she had sensed another Force user in close proximity. He says, this may be well into speculation territory. Yeah, it is.
I think, although saying that, we spent the first half of the show just well into speculation territory, so we'll see you out there.
I do like the idea that they are like trying to give away that.
It's funny, like
stuff like that.
It's gonna be ridiculous. If like you and I were in Star Wars, imagine that's an in joke that you could emerge like you do on set anytime he was near. Like, but he's probably just gone Daisy. Like probably just seen her.
Yeah.
And said hi. So this is Oregano name 119.
Okay.
The last few episodes haven't had it, but before the episodes had this really awesome symphonic stuff going on with violins and shit. Do you know what the name of it is? I thought it was awesome and I miss it.
I hated it. That's why I took it out of the show. I've got it edited, so I've got to listen to it. And that's why I didn't like it. That's why I've replaced it with some cool Star Wars jazz.
It was in Art Box Symphony 4, the shit.
I can let you know the name of it. It's from our like audio like library, so it's not an actual track.
You know what? This digression. You know, if you watch MTV these days, because I'm so old. So watching the Scream TV show, when there's a song playing in the show, it tells you what it is at the bottom.
Is that the story?
Yeah, that's the story.
Wow.
Cut that
out. Or we'll probably leave it in, to be honest, because I'm editing it. But if you want to get in touch with us, as always, rebelbase@ign.com.
Okay, so there's a picture going around the internet early in the week where somebody's nan or mum had a picture of Jesus on their fireplace.
Right.
And it turned out it was actually Ewan McGregor in Star Wars. And it got me thinking...
See you next week.
That's the fun thing that happens. See you later. It got me thinking that I actually quite like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. And before Comic-Con, somebody posted on Reddit a picture of supposedly the upcoming Star Wars slate for the next 7-8 years.
Yeah.
And one of the spin-off movies, the anthology movies, was going to be called Kenobi.
Right.
And I thought, you know what? I would love them to do another Obi-Wan Kenobi, a standalone Obi-Wan Kenobi character. Because he's such an important character. I think there's a lot of his story to be told. He's a really important character because he fills in the intervening years, the Clone Wars and all that sort of stuff. Rebels, he could be there.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? He's older. He's perfect to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to see anyone else do it. I just think that he deserves another shot at being Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I thought he was a really good Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people don't like Alex doesn't like his sort of impression of like the old Ben, but I thought he did really, really well.
I think he gets stronger and stuff. And also I think it's one of those things that's so easy to latch onto. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think he has to do the impression.
No.
But I guess he's committed into it. But you've seen him, like, in those 3 movies, you see him in very different stages of his career. Like, he's had to play very different Obi-Wan Kenobis in every film.
Definitely.
And I'd love to see him do the next one where he's like Rogue, or, you know, there's a new Star Wars comic coming out which is going to fill in some of these gaps where it's going to be like a one-shot, all about Kenobi, the Jason Aaron. I think Jason Aaron's writing it, but he writes the ongoing series. And it's going to be all focused on Kenobi, but I'd love to see him come back to that role and actually illustrate that on film. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I thought he was a really, really good Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, I think him and Qui-Gon Jinn's, like, they sort of, like, funny banter between each other is really good. Like, it shows that he's got a sense of humour. But he's a really good actor as well. Like, but then he has done quite a few stinkers.
So I think this is where maybe the baggage is overtaking him, because there's this thing, I don't know if it is still the case, but a couple of years ago, somebody did an analysis of the least bankable actors in Hollywood.
Based on, what do you mean by bankable?
So what it is, it means, I think the metric they used was something like return on investment. So like the amount of money, amount he costs to hire, how much the budget of the film is, and what it earns back. But I think that's skewed because he did films like Down with Love, which was actually cost more than you think, but actually didn't make a return. So even if you factor in Star Wars, he was still one of those actors that couldn't like open a movie. He's not like, basically the inverse of what you think of Will Smith or Tom Cruise is, where he can command 20 mil or like something off the back end, but you know, weekend one, everyone will see a Will Smith movie. Or they would 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So he's the opposite of that. He couldn't really hold a film. And I guess that's the proposition if you made a Kenobi movie.
Right.
But my argument, same with all the like Marvel movies, the star here is Star Wars, the star is Marvel. And it means you can cast like Tom Holland, or like the new Spider-Man movie, they can cast Tom Holland and give it a director to John Watts, who you've never really heard of. And I think the same with this, like I think he's already played that role. Gives it great continuity. And I think Kenobi's bigger than it.
I think out of everything in the prequels, he's one of the most watchable things in them, I think. Because he's got a really good screen presence, and just look at that little beard and stuff as well. I spoke to him once when he was promoting Jack the Giant Slayer, or Jack the
Bryan
Giant
Singer
Killer.
movie.
Yeah. It's a terrible, terrible film.
See, that's what I mean.
But I asked him, like, you know, would you ever be up for going back to Star Wars? And he said, I'd rather I did it than anyone else, which is pretty cool, really.
So I think that's confirmation that he is playing Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Kenobi coming out in 2019. Actually, in all seriousness, do you think Ewan McGregor deserves another shot at being Obi-Wan Kenobi? If not, who could play old Ben? Let us know, rebelbase@ign.com. And until next week, for everything on Star Wars, stay right here on IGN.